This sweet potato casserole has all of the tasty Thanksgiving flavors in one dish. You've got a creamy, fluffy, spiced sweet potato layer on the bottom, and that's then topped with a nutty pecan crumble that is sweetened with dates. The contrast between silky sweet potatoes and crunchy nuts, I think, makes for the perfect texture combination. And believe me when I say, you certainly won't be missing any marshmallows in this recipe. So let me show you how to make this sweet potato casserole. To get started, you'll need to peel 3 pounds of sweet potatoes, which is about 3 large sweet potatoes, about yay big, though the potatoes can vary widely in size, so I do recommend you weigh them. There are also several varieties of sweet potatoes, and today I'm using garnet sweet potatoes, which have a slightly redder skin than Beauregard or Jewel sweet potatoes, which have a slightly oranger skin, and they're what you find most often in the supermarket in the US. But all of those varieties have similar orange flesh on the inside, so it really doesn't matter which ones you pick up. Heck, you could even use purple sweet potatoes if you wanted to whip up a purple sweet potato casserole. Once those are peeled, slice them into rounds and then stack a few of them on top of each other to chop them up into cubes. Also, as a friendly reminder, make sure to sharpen all of your knives before Thanksgiving. As I was slicing into these, I made a mental note to myself that I needed to sharpen my knives. And I have an electric sharpener that I have used for years, so if you're looking for one for yourself, I'll link it below in the description box. I have tried using a whetstone over the years for sharpening, but honestly, I always default back to my electric sharpener for the sharpest blade. But if you are great at using a whetstone, then I say stick with what you know. Fill a large pot with water, then bring that to a rolling boil over high heat. Add the sweet potato chunks, and do be careful to not splash the water as much as possible because it is hot. So gently tip the bowl in low and slow, and cook the potato chunks for 20 to 30 minutes or until they're fork tender. While the potatoes are cooking, you can prep the topping, and that starts with roughly chopping up 3/4 cup of pecans. If you're not a fan of pecans, you can swap in walnuts or another nut, but I am personally a fan of pecans during the holidays. And once that's done, add them to a medium mixing bowl. Next, roughly chop up 1/4 cup of pepitas. And when it comes to chopping up the nuts and seeds, you can chop them as roughly or as finely as you would like, depending on the texture you prefer. And for a little sweetness, instead of sugar or marshmallows, you'll chop up 4 pitted dates. And do make sure they're pitted because no one wants to accidentally bite into a chunk of a hard pit. Also, pro tip, dates are much easier to chop up if they've been chilled in the fridge for about 30 minutes so that they're firmer. And guess what I forgot to do today before filming? So as you can see, mine are sticking a bit to the knife, but it's really not that big of a deal. I'll just pick them off and continue dicing them up. Add 1/4 cup of almond flour to continue our nut and seed topping theme, and then add 2 tablespoons of melted butter. If you're dairy-free, you can also swap in a vegan butter. Then use your hands to make sure everything is mixed up and well coated in a bit of almond flour and butter for a crumbly topping that will turn nice and golden. When the sweet potatoes are done, drain them in a colander in the sink and give yourself a sweet potato steam facial. I mean, this has got to be good for the pores, right? Like an extra dose of vitamin A. Or perhaps that's just a little wishful thinking on my part. Transfer the sweet potato to a large mixing bowl, and then you can either mash them up with a potato masher or use a hand mixer. I prefer using a hand mixer as it makes for the lightest, most fluffiest texture, but really either way works. And then to make them super creamy, add 1/4 cup of your favorite milk, 1/4 cup of melted butter, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract for more natural sweetness, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg, 1 teaspoon kosher salt, and 1/4 teaspoon black pepper. Continue mixing that until everything is well combined and the spices are mixed throughout. I am such a lover of all things cinnamon and nutmeg this time of year, and you want to know what else has cinnamon and nutmeg in it? My homemade eggnog recipe. If you haven't yet made that, it is seriously the easiest 5-minute eggnog you can make in a high-powered blender. I am known as the eggnog queen in my family because it is hands down my favorite boozy holiday beverage. And that recipe, my friends, is also on my website. But back to the casserole, spread the whipped sweet potato in the bottom of a 9 by 13 inch baking pan, and then top it with your date sweetened nutty pecan crumble by just sprinkling it evenly on top. Bake that in a 375-degree Fahrenheit oven for about 25 to 30 minutes or until the top is lightly golden. Then take it out and serve yourself up some of this fluffy, creamy, sweet and crunchy sweet potato casserole goodness that is a classic Thanksgiving side dish. And one that I am more than happy to serve up for myself today as a midday snack after filming. It's definitely one of the joys of filming days, and that's that I end up with lots of tasty food to munch on. All right, let's dig in. Get a nice big bite. Mmm. So good. The sweet potato is so fluffy and light. It's not gonna weigh you down at all. And I love the little bites of crunch that you get from the pecans and the pepitas and the sweetness from the dates, and you get that cinnamon nutmeg flavor as well. It's perfectly sweet without being overly sweet. Now, as a pro tip, because Thanksgiving Day is always just a whole bunch of craziness, something you can do to save time in the kitchen is you can make the entire sweet potato puree component, store that in a separate container, make the topping, the chopped nuts and dates and pepitas, store those in a separate container. So make all of that the night before Thanksgiving, and then the day of Thanksgiving, take them out of the fridge about a half an hour or so before you want to bake them so that they just warm up to room temperature a bit. Spread the sweet potato in a casserole dish, top it with the crunchy topping, and then bake it in the oven, and your life was just made a little bit easier. I also want to add that I have a whole slew of the best Thanksgiving side dishes on my website. Many of them have YouTube videos as well. Everything from creamed corn to roasted acorn squash to a classic mashed potato to roasted balsamic bacon Brussels sprouts, which are my favorite, to honey glazed carrot, and of course a butternut squash soup. You can't forget a butternut squash soup. Links to all of those Thanksgiving side dishes are below in the video description, so make sure to check those out.